Hey everybody, so welcome back to Tim Travels. Got some input from people on my idea that I had yesterday at the beginning of the video about doing stuff on the year. I'm not going to do that right now, but I do want to say this, and you know, I get that being a public figure, sometimes I'm going to be subjected to detractors, and that comes with the territory of being a YouTube sensation. But here's the deal, okay? And let me just save you some time. If you're one of those people that doesn't want to hear me talk about, like I said yesterday, history, geology, geography, the law sometimes, then go to another channel. There are lots of great trucker channels out there. And, while I certainly watch a lot of truckers at all sorts of different companies, including Prime, obviously, but I follow people on their journeys, right? But here's the thing. I'm not trying to replicate what somebody else is doing. I mean, like, would you go to see the same movie over and over and over again? Okay, maybe if it's Christmas Story, you watch it every year, or Elf, you watch it every year at Christmas. And, I might go to see something a couple of times, but, most movies you wouldn't watch over and over and over again. And the other thing, too, is that while there are lots of cool trucker channels, I mean, there are some that are just pretty dang boring. I mean, I don't care if you had a lug nut that was loose, okay? That's, tighten it up and go on. I mean, if it's something that happened that was weird with your equipment, I kind of want to hear about that. But, so anyway, if you don't want to, if you can't pick up nuance sometimes and you don't want to understand things better, then, this isn't your channel. Go watch a channel with some guy pulling stumps with his old Jeep pickup truck or whatever. But that's not what I do. So anyway, and now they got that off my chest. Apologize for that rant. I want to rant about a couple other things real quick. So, one of the banes of the existence of most truckers are people that are bobtail. And for the past couple of days, I was bobtail because I just didn't have a load yet to run, and so I was like bobtailing around. But here's the deal. If you're bobtail, just be a good human being and don't take up a spot that'll fit a 70-foot truck in it. I don't even care if you paid for this spot. It's still not cool. Why? Because somebody with 74 feet of truck would pay for the spot, and they can't go all the places you can go. I mean, I went to parked in a hotel parking lot, outside of restaurants, outside of stores. Almost nobody except for those assholes at Buc-ee's cares about a bobtail in their parking lot. Nobody. But, and I'm not saying you got to camp where you go, but I'm just saying, let the people that got a trailer on their back park, okay? It would make lots of people's lives easier, and it won't make your life any harder. You can just make a spot somewhere. Like right across from me, by the way, I'm at the Loves in Barstow, but right across from me there are 5 Connex boxes, 5 intermodal containers, whatever. They're lined up in the parking lot. So basically, Loves is taking up 1, 2, 3, 4 good parking spots. But here's the deal. There's enough space that you could parallel park 2 bobtails there. Loves wouldn't give a crap because it's the back of the containers. But you would make it easier on other people. Actually, Loves is taking up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots because they have their tire trailer there. So I guess they need that. But anyway, just please don't do that, right? Like, it's hard enough to park in a lot of areas. Just be a good citizen. Be a good trucker pal, whatever you want to call it. So I stopped in Barstow. I actually picked up a load in Ontario. I'm on my way up to Salt Lake City. I'm going to go to the terminal because this doesn't deliver till Tuesday. But it's hot as heck. It's like legit like 105 here in Barstow. So I came up Cajon Pass, rolled up here, but you know what? I stopped to get reefer fuel, but I'm just gonna wait a couple hours till the sun goes down before I start back across the desert. You say, well, why would you do that? And the answer is because I'm not in a hurry, and it just dogs my truck less. It dogs the reefer less, it dogs the truck less. You know, if you're good to your equipment will be good to you. And, you know, I kind of believe in that, you know. Like when I was coming up Cajon Pass, it was like 90, it was up 99 or 100 all the way up. It's actually hotter up here now that we're up in the high desert. So you know what I did? I shut my AC off, I rolled my windows down. I was still maintaining about between 35 and 40 miles an hour. I didn't get too hot, I didn't die, but I made it a little bit easier on my truck. And so, you know, my truck makes me money and it gets me home. And I kind of look at my truck the way I looked at ships when I was in the Navy. I got to take care of this girl because if I don't, I'm going to have to swim. I don't mind swimming, but I don't want to have to swim for days under the blazing sun. I also don't want to have to walk anywhere under the blazing sun or wait for somebody to come help me, tow me away out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. So anyway, so that's that. I wanted to talk about personal conveyance because I've heard some ugly rumors. You know, I've heard people have said stuff to me, maybe in comments or whatever. They've said, hey, you know, Prime is getting ready to take personal conveyance away, and because people are misusing it, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it's really weird, right, that how, like, what a lightning rod personal conveyance is. Because if you think about it, personal conveyance is just one category of duty status. It's not more important than any other category. And truthfully, it's not more susceptible to misuse. And I can prove it to you. And this is the preface to what I'm going to talk about beyond this, but bear with me. So have you ever been to the terminal in Springfield or any terminal at any trucking company or a truck stop and ever seen people driving around really, really slow, like maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 miles an hour if they're risk takers? Have you ever seen that? I know I have. I've seen myself do it, right? What are we doing? Well, we're violating the spirit and intent of the hours of service logs, right? Because when we're doing that, how many people, I'm not going to admit to anything, but how many people get to inbound at Springfield, go off duty, right, while they're waiting, putt in the garage, wait off duty, then they pull out, they putt away, they're barely eking their way across the terminal space, and they are off duty the whole time. They've started their break, but that's a misuse of off duty time. I mean, they are clearly driving, right? They are clearly in an on duty status, but they couldn't even use on duty because on duty's not for moving the truck. Yard move is, but on duty or off duty or sleeper berth or personal conveyance in those scenarios I'm describing are all the wrong duty status. Now, some people would say, well, you can't use yard move on your own terminal. That's only for like shippers and receivers. I'm not sure about that because I actually had somebody that worked in logs at one company, not Prime. Because I got up in the morning and what I did was I put myself on duty to do my inspection. But I also wanted to fuel. So what I did is I putted, it was dark out still, it was early in the morning. I put over to the fuel island, right? And my justification for this in my mind is it's easier to see things under the canopy because it's lit, right? So I can open up my hood, I can see stuff, even though I have a flashlight and I have a headlamp and stuff, but it's just easier, right? And while I'm inspecting everything, I can also have nozzles in, fuel in simultaneously. So, I get a call from the logs/safety lady, and she says, well, hey, you can't do that because you moved the truck. And I said, well, I put an accurate description of what I was doing. I was fueling and inspecting. She's like, yeah, but you moved the truck. I said, so what do you want me to do? She goes, you should have used yard move. Now, I didn't argue with her, and she sent me an edit, and I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, because it's just another on-duty status. So, maybe people could use yard move. I don't know. I don't want to, because that's not the purpose of this. But my point about this part of what I'm saying is that lots of different categories get misused. Here's another example. Let's say that you went to the terminal, right? You went to the terminal and you dropped a trailer, whether it was empty or loaded. And then you live 10 miles away. So rather than screwing with these stupid logs that ask you all these questions that are really slow to react, you just drive home. Wah. You're misusing the driving because you're not driving. You're not on duty, right? You're going home. You're not doing it. Is anybody going to give you a ticket for that? Of course not. But you're still not driving, right? You're not working, right? You're on home time. Once you drop that trailer and you leave, you're on home time, right? It doesn't matter if you're not home yet. You're still on home time. You're on your own time. You're not under any direction from your carrier or anybody else, right? You're just bobtailing home. That's PC, right? You're misusing your drive line. Now, like I said, for practical purposes, no one in a million years would give you a ticket for that, right? No one's ever going to get it. No one's ever gotten a ticket for being on the drive line, right? It just doesn't happen. So anyway, let's talk about this personal conveyance. Now that we've established that all the categories of the hours of service are used improperly, like when you say you're in the sleeper berth, but you're not. Like you say, I'm in the sleeper berth, but then you go inside and you get a McFlurry and then you're walking around eating it, enjoying the sights, whatever. You're not in the sleeper berth. You're misusing the hours of service logs, plain and simple. So personal conveyance. So I was PCing around Southern Cal because I wasn't doing any work. I was going shopping, doing this, doing that, going to get something to eat. And so I get the note on personal conveyance. Now here's my rub with personal conveyance. What the law says, well, let me back up. So FMCSA says the company can have a policy, okay? And I'm down with that, right? Because the government said the company can have a policy and restrict personal conveyance. But let's not be dishonest or mistaken about what the regulation says, okay? And I heard some misstatements at the safety meeting the other day about, somebody was talking about seat belts, and they were like, oh yeah, these trucks are really safe, and as long as you wear your seatbelt, you're going to be safe. And I'm like, and my co-driver was actually driving. I was watching the meeting, but I had the sound on. And I'm like, that's not true. These trucks are not safe, right? Honestly, if you hit a car, you're probably going to do okay. But try rolling one of these or smacking head on into another truck versus, some modern car like a Honda Accord doing the same maneuvers. guaranteed that the car is safer. Why? Because commercial vehicles don't have all these rigid standards. We have seat belts, but they could just do away with that if they really wanted to. And then the person was like, "Oh, we don't want you to wear orange because we want people to make sure that you see that you got your seatbelt on." And you know, it was funny. Well, actually, it wasn't funny. A cop, I can't even remember what state it was in. They hit a motorist that was, for some reason, it stopped in the road and was still in their car. They killed the motorist, and the motorist was not belted in. But guess what? The cop wasn't either. Okay? And I've heard of lots of accidents with CMVs where people didn't have seatbelts on. But let's just be honest, right? Seatbelt, you wear a seatbelt because it's the law. Okay? Because, there's actually no empirical data that supports the notion that seatbelts save lives, right? I wear a seatbelt all the time. I have since I was a little kid. My parents insisted on it. My dad always believed in seatbelts. My dad worked at a hospital. He was an x-ray and lab technician. He saw a lot. This is back in the 60s when cars were just made out of like steel and the inside was like wood, And he saw a lot of really bad accidents, and he was always convinced that seatbelts were a good way to go. But there's no empirical data, right? Because you don't really know why somebody died, And so anyway, I'm like, let's be factual, Let's not try to scare people. Let's not. And one of the things that I don't like about the trucking industry is the fear mongering that goes on, Like, when I went through CDL school, I thought I had good instructors, but some of the stuff they would say was just fear-mongering. I don't like that. It's like, let's be honest, we're all adults here, okay? Let's understand exactly what we're supposed to do, understand the dangers, mitigate risk, be safe, but let's not make it more dramatic than it has to be. Let's not scare people, okay? There's too many people in this industry that are afraid to do anything, and it makes them unhappy. So let's get back to this personal conveyance real quick, and I apologize for my digression. So I get this message, and I'm going to read it as it came into me. It says, please make sure, so it says, oh, you're in personal conveyance. Please make sure, and now I'm quoting, please make sure this is the correct duty status, period. To legally use PC. So now they're going to tell me what the law is. You must be either using the tractor for personal use while bobtailing or moving with an empty trailer, not at the direction of prime. So what in that statement is factually incorrect and not actually the law? Well, first of all, I've read the regulation. It doesn't say anything about bobtailing, right? And it also says you can legally use personal conveyance while you're loaded. You don't have to have an empty trailer. So here's an example. I'll give you this perfect example right this second. I'm in Barstow, and I know for a fact that there is an in and out on the other side of the interstate. Now, I came here and I put myself off duty, okay? But let's say, because I backed into a parking spot, went off duty. I've gone inside, I got myself my beverage, which you saw, right? And I'm out here doing a YouTube video. But if I get done with this, right, even though I'm loaded, even though I'm dispatched, my position is if I go on PC and I say transit to in and out, right? I go to in and out, I put myself off duty while eating an in and out. Then I come back in my truck and I'm like, I'm gonna go back to that truck stop, right? I'm gonna PC back to this truck stop where I was parked. Nobody at Prime is telling me I have to do any of those things, and they're all for personal use. right? Because I'm not even right now, I still have 8 hours on my drive clock. I don't have to take a break. I'm not required by law to come back to this truck stop or by my company. I can PC there, go off duty, have a double-double, and come back all on personal conveyance. But this trailer is loaded and set at 35 degrees. I'm not advancing the load, right? And I'm using the truck for personal use. And I'm not violating any company policy, okay? So one of the things, and then they go on and they give some other information, which is both useful and correct, okay? But let me say this, so again, I don't have any problem with the law. I don't have any problem with company policies. But let's just be accurate about what we're saying and stop trying to scare people or kind of like push them in a direction that they're not really required to go, right? Let's stop scaring people. Now, let's talk about whether or not a company can do away with personal conveyance. Well, I think the regulation, which is to say the law, is pretty clear that a company could do away with personal conveyance. But any company that does away with personal conveyance is really, really not bright. Why? Because there are going to be instances where people use up their clocks in on-duty status, which is to say on-duty, yard move, driving, right? Any of those three, they're going to use up their clock in an on-duty status when they could have been using PC for its intended purpose, right? PC was invented by this guy named John Conveyance, and but PC was thought of to say, hey, sometimes drivers need to do things and they don't have the hours, or they just they want to do something that benefits them personally, but we shouldn't call it on duty time. Now, I've said in other videos that there should just be driving should just be driving, right? No matter what you're doing, and they should just give you more time, like an extra hour a day, like make it 12 hours. Do away with the 14-hour clock, 12 hours. So if you drive for 4 hours and stop, then you've only got 4 hours of driving. You still got 8 more to go. You don't need all these other nonsense. Just give everybody 12 hours a day and call it good, right? If they use that for what we would now consider PC, fine. If they use it for driving, fine. Who cares, right? Because PC is also like this, it's almost like this, legal fiction, right? It's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm advancing the load, so I'm on the drive line. What are you doing? I'm going to get a freaking double-double. Well, I'm still doing the same activity. I'm still driving a big-ass truck, right? Why is one on duty and one off duty? I have the same responsibilities under the law. Like, if I'm off duty, am I allowed to wreck? Am I allowed to run over pedestrians? Of course not. So why even have two different things? Just call it drive. I'm driving. The truck's moving, I'm driving. 12 hours a day. Anyway, here's the other thing here's the other reason I don't think Prime would be very smart to get rid of PC. I don't care if 200 guys a week get tickets, right? We got 8,000 drivers, 80% of whom are lease operators. If any company, if I'm a lease operator, right? So I'm an independent contractor, right? I have independent contractor status. If you tell me that you won't let me use personal conveyance, then I kind of feel like that's crossed the line. It's not, yes, it could be the company policy, and I am running under Prime's authority, but that really smacks of just telling me, like, managing my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of feels like, you know, we're going to micromanage you because a few people have messed it up for everybody. I'm also, other than like when I trained recruits, other than in a training environment in like the military, I'm not a big fan of group punishment at all. And, you know, the idea that you would do away with PC for 8,000 people because 200 of them messed it up, even if it is 200, I don't even think it's that high. I mean, you know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and tell you I've never misused PC. I have, you know, but I think that there's a little too much consternation about it, and you know, yeah, there's people getting popped, but if you want to, you know, like, let's stop beating everybody up for the sins of a few people. You know, it's like there are truck drivers as I speak that are shit-faced behind the wheel and they got a bag of dope in the back. But I don't do that. I shouldn't get penalized for that, right? So the same thing goes with personal conveyance. I've read the law over and over again. I've read the policies. You know, I know when I'm allowed to use it and when I'm not. And, you know, I just really want people to understand personal conveyance is just as important as driving or on duty or whatever. I mean, it's no, you know, using personal conveyance is not only appropriate sometimes, it's required, right? It's required. If you're, you know, in the scenario I gave you, if you're driving home and your fleet manager's like, I'll call you in 2 weeks, you're not supposed to be on the drive line. You're supposed to be in personal conveyance. So anyway, love to hear the thoughts on this. But I am, like I said, if you haven't read the regulation, don't come at me about, oh, well, you can't do this or you can't do that, right? Because I've read it repeatedly, and I spent a lot of time in my life getting paid to figure out, you know, laws and figure out if there were loopholes. And I take the view that hours of service are, you know, I look at them in their totality as a body of law, a body of regulation that has the force of law. And personal conveyance is like this redheaded stepchild, and it shouldn't be. People should use it correctly, but people should use it whenever it's appropriate, you know, and we shouldn't be scared to use it. So anyway, talk to you later, and we'll be back shortly, probably tomorrow, and we'll do some history. I think I'm up to maybe like 1,435 people, so we're going to skip a couple of years. Anyway, be safe, and we'll see you soon.